In my opinion, this has to be the last year of the Kirk Cousins experiment for the Minnesota Vikings. I think when you look at the 4 year, after this year, 5 year run of Kirk Cousins being the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, well, offensively, they've never been this good in franchise history through a 4 year stretch. They have a all pro caliber receiver. They have another Pro Bowl caliber receiver in Adam Thielen. That guy I mentioned first, Justin Jefferson, I didn't think I needed to explain him. Hopefully, Irv Smith comes back from this latest injury decent enough to be a solid tight end number one. This offensive line looks decent. While all of that is true, there's a couple problems with the offense. For some reason, they can't make it through a full season healthy. One of these guys ends up going down for a decent chunk of the season, and it never through a 17-game season now is going to be 100% healthy. The next issue, Kirk Cousins. While he is in a group of quarterbacks that you can win football games with, he's also in the group of quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo, Carson Wentz, and other guys who, you're kind of stuck with them. You can't get very much better than them, but there's also not very much worse than them either. You see, the problem with Kirk Cousins is he's a really good quarterback, but he's probably in the bottom third of the league in terms of guys you would want to be the starter for your franchise. He's definitely not in the group of quarterbacks that you win because of. That group is reserved for guys like Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I would venture to say Joe Burrow is in that. I would venture to say Russell Wilson is in that. I would venture to say Justin Herbert is getting to that point in his career. And there's a couple other guys that I didn't mention. I'm not going to rattle off every elite quarterback in the NFL. I think you can fill in the blanks for me. But then there's another group of quarterbacks that it's like, okay, well, they might not be better than Kirk Cousins, but I would sure want them ahead of Kirk Cousins because there's a future for these guys. Those are the guys like Mac Jones. Those are the guys like Kyler Murray. Those are the guys like Trevor Lawrence. Those are the guys like even Zach Wilson to an extent. I've already given you 12 to 14 guys that I can name off the top of my head that I think every single franchise in the NFL would want ahead of Kirk Cousins. And it's just the harsh reality. Every quarterback in this league is really good, whether they're young, whether they're old, whether their stats are really good, or whether their stats suck. Every quarterback that starts in the league is really good. Kirk Cousins is really good, but he cannot compete with the other guys who are the reason that their franchises are making the playoffs and making deep runs in the playoffs. You throw in the fact that the Minnesota Vikings the last 2 years have never allowed more points on the defensive side of the ball in franchise history. They allowed almost 900 points in the last 2 years. 900 points. In a 2 year stretch, they've never been worse in franchise history. When the game of football is so complimentary. If you have a bad defense, your offense is never going to look great. If you have a bad offense, your defense is never going to look great. And it's just all around not a great situation for Minnesota, yet they're still going to win games. This team is still going to win at least 6 games if Kirk Cousins starts the entire year. They're going to win at least 6 games. They're probably going to win 7 to 10 games. They're not going to win the division. They're going to make the wild card round. Maybe they even mess around and win in the wild card against like the numbers, like 4-seeded, whoever the worst division winner is this year, like the Philadelphia Eagles or something like that. But it's also like, okay, that's just not the team that you want. That's not the kind of team you want. You want Super Bowl contender or you want number 1 pick contender. And what the Vikings have right now is a playoff contender. Not really what you want in the NFL right now. Now, I don't think suggesting starting Kellen Mond for the entire year is really a smart suggestion. If I were trying to have just like a hot take, I would tell you, yeah, the Vikings need to start Kellen Mond now. But it would literally just revolve around the fact that Kellen Mond isn't a good quarterback either. And all he does is give you a chance at the number 1 overall pick. But that is what the Minnesota Vikings should want, is a chance at least at the number one overall pick in this year's draft. No matter if it's a quarterback that's coming out, doesn't matter if it's a wide receiver, a corner, a linebacker, a defensive end, an offensive lineman. They just need to acquire more talent. This team has become really devoid of talent outside of their number one guys. Outside of Dalvin Cook, outside of Harrison Smith, outside of Justin Jefferson, there's not a lot of talent at many positions on this team. And it's not going to just get magically fixed one day. It's going to have to look really bad for a little bit until it gets fixed. And this is the perfect year to start looking bad if you're the Minnesota Vikings.